Well, Holmes, the November evenings certainly draw in quickly now. Still, there's a comfort to the familiar glow of the fire here in our old Baker Street rooms. It warms the bones. I see the latest strand has arrived, my chronicle of that rather unsettling affair. The Adventure of the Invisible Poison is finally published.
The Invisible Poison, a suitably dramatic title for your readership, Watson, I grant you, though perhaps not entirely inaccurate, considering the veil of secrecy under which our involvement began. A case born from whispers and shadows, was it not?
Indeed it was. Utmost discretion was demanded from the first. It's remarkable, isn't it? One reads daily of such marvels, these aeroplanes conquering the skies, the pace of invention quickening everywhere. And yet that case plunged us into a world that seemed simultaneously archaic and alarmingly advanced.
A precise summation. The primitive allure of spiritualism, a refuge for the credulous, serving as camouflage for a method rooted in the very scientific progress the age so readily celebrates. A dangerous paradox requiring a, shall we say, unconventional approach to pierce the fog.
Thinking back on The Adventure of the Invisible Poison, Holmes, it strikes me how utterly discreet its beginnings were. Not the usual summons to a crime scene, but that quiet, almost furtive arrival of Inspector Hardcastle here at Baker Street.
A necessary secrecy, Watson. Hardcastle faced an unprecedented dilemma. Victims displaying undeniable symptoms of poisoning, yet the finest toxicologists at Scotland Yard's disposal could find no earthly trace of any known agent. Baffling, utterly baffling. It presented as death by sheer impossibility, a specter defying their scientific methods entirely.
Which led us, if memory serves, into the rather shadowy world of spiritualism. I recall vividly the atmosphere within Madame Evangeline's establishment. The air itself felt heavy, charged with anticipation. Dim lighting, the scent of exotic incense, and that hushed reverence amongst the attendees hanging on her every word.
A meticulously crafted environment designed to lower critical faculties and enhance the perceived mystique. Madame Evangeline played her part with considerable flair, the dramatic sighs, the trembling pronouncements from the supposed spirit world. A performance, Watson, honed through practice.
One felt quite drawn in, I must admit. The collective will to believe in that room was almost palpable. You, however, seemed immune to the theatrics.
Immunity through observation, my dear fellow. The true challenge in such circumstances is differentiating between genuine, if perhaps misguided, belief, the purely theatrical, and something altogether more calculated. One must look beyond the overt spectacle, beyond the spirit wrappings and ethereal voices. My focus was necessarily drawn to the periphery, to the subtle currents beneath the surface performance. Was the seance merely a backdrop, a diversion? The possibility of deliberate manipulation, cloaked in the supernatural, was the hypothesis demanding investigation. The secrecy Hardcastle insisted upon was merely the first layer we had to penetrate.
And joining us by the fireside this evening, listeners, is the very person who brought this perplexing matter to our attention. Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle, it's a distinct pleasure to have you back within these familiar walls. The scent of pipe smoke and coal fire seems much the same, does it not?
Dr. Watson, Mr. Holmes, thank you for the invitation. Indeed, some things remain blessedly constant, though the circumstances of our last significant meeting here were fraught with rather more urgency, I recall.
Urgency born of frustration, Inspector, if memory serves. Official channels proving inadequate to the task.
Precisely, Mr. Holmes. We were utterly stumped. Healthy individuals, pillars of society, some of them, dropping dead with all the signs of poisoning, yet the finest toxicologists at the yard could find nothing. Absolutely nothing. The pressure from the commissioner's office was considerable. Whispers of incompetence, public unease, it was becoming untenable.
I remember you seemed quite burdened when you arrived that evening. The decision to consult Holmes couldn't have been taken lightly, given the yard's, shall we say, occasional skepticism towards unofficial assistance.
Taken lightly, Doctor, it was a calculated risk, bordering on professional suicide had it gone awry or become public knowledge prematurely. Officially, Mr. Holmes's involvement was non-existent. Unofficially, it was my only recourse against an enemy we couldn't even identify, let alone comprehend. My superiors demanded results, yet simultaneously frowned upon methods outside the established protocols. A damnable position.
And compounded, no doubt, by the necessity of navigating such sensitive matters within the Yard's particular structure.
Indeed, being one of the few women in my position already invites a certain scrutiny. Advocating for clandestine cooperation with an external consultant, especially one with Mr. Holmes's reputation for the unorthodox, required a level of discretion that was, frankly, exhausting. Every memo, every meeting felt like walking through a minefield. Added to that, we had early, highly classified intelligence suggesting elements of the Clockwork Gang were actively seeking. Well, let us call it novel scientific applications for their enterprises. It painted a disturbing picture, linking these inexplicable deaths to something far more organized and technologically sophisticated than random acts.
The Clockwork Gang. Their shadow loomed large even then, venturing into territories beyond simple thuggery.
They were adapting, Doctor, moving beyond brute force into areas requiring specialized knowledge. This case felt like the chilling vanguard of that shift. We were facing not just murder, but potentially the weaponization of scientific progress itself, and the rulebook offered no solutions.
Indeed, Inspector, where conventional chemistry drew a blank and the keenest eye saw nothing amiss, physics offered a potential avenue. We were dealing, I suspected, not with absence of evidence, but with evidence invisible to our limited senses. Certain substances, you see, possess the curious property of absorbing light at one wavelength and re-emitting it at another, longer wavelength. Fluorescence, the physicists term it. A phenomenon known, but its practical application in detection, less explored. My work involved harnessing rays beyond the visible violet spectrum.
Your invisible rays, Holmes. I remember you adapting that electrical arc lamp device in your rooms. All manner of quartz lenses and peculiar dark glass filters.
Quartz, Watson, precisely because ordinary glass absorbs the very rays needed. Combined with filters to isolate the specific ultraviolet emanations and block the visible light, it allowed one to perceive only the secondary glow, the fluorescence induced in certain trace materials.
And perceive we did. I shall never forget that moment in the dim light of poor Mr. Abernathy's study. You switched on your apparatus, that low hum, the faint, eerie violet corona around the lens, and directed the beam. Where moments before there was only polished wood and upholstery, suddenly, ghastly, shimmering traces sprang into existence. On the arm of his chair, near his teacup, like phosphorescent fingerprints left by a phantom.
A phantom signature, Doctor. It was compelling, utterly convincing to us standing there, but presenting evidence revealed by an experimental invisible ray machine, based on principles few understood outside a laboratory. That posed a significant challenge to established procedure, Mr. Holmes. A significant challenge indeed.
And yet, Inspector, the very asterisk necessity for such a device highlights the emergent dangers we face. When scientific knowledge, intended perhaps for enlightenment or industry, can be subverted to create undetectable methods of harm. It forces detection to evolve, however unconventionally. It demonstrates, starkly, the profound responsibility that accompanies discovery and the potential for catastrophe when that knowledge falls into unscrupulous hands. Indeed, Inspector, the very necessity for such an apparatus underscores a chilling reality of our age. The potential for profound scientific understanding, such as that emerging in fields like Professor Fleming's, to be twisted towards profoundly destructive ends. Knowledge itself carries no inherent morality, but its application most certainly does.
Precisely, Mr. Holmes, and it is a reality my colleagues and I confront with increasing regularity. Organizations like the Clockwork Gang aren't merely thugs. They are actively seeking out these advancements, these invisible poisons and worse. They represent a new breed of criminal, leveraging ingenuity for nefarious purposes.
It adds another layer of tragedy, doesn't it? Beyond the scientific complexity, which I confess I found devilishly difficult to convey accurately yet engagingly in my published account, there was the human element. How readily systems of belief, even sincere ones, can become entangled. How vulnerable individuals, seeking solace or answers, can be manipulated within these elaborate deceptions.
The manipulation of hope, Watson, is often the cruelest weapon in the criminal arsenal. It preys not just on the wallet, but on the spirit itself. It requires a particular callousness to exploit faith, whether in the ethereal or the scientific.
And that threat hasn't diminished, gentlemen. The Clockwork Gang and others like them remain a persistent shadow. Their methods evolve as science progresses. It places a heavy burden not only on the men and women of science to consider the implications of their discoveries, but equally upon us in law enforcement to anticipate and counteract these emerging dangers.
A weighty responsibility indeed. One requires foresight, the other, vigilance. It seems the march of progress casts long and often dark shadows we must continually strive to illuminate. This evening has certainly illuminated the peculiar nature of that case, Inspector. A most unsettling blend, the shadows of the seance room meeting the cold glare of modern science.
Indeed, Dr. Watson, a challenge unlike any we had faced. Your involvement, gentlemen, was crucial.
The future will undoubtedly present more such collisions between archaic belief and advanced, potentially dangerous knowledge. Vigilance remains paramount.
We are immensely grateful for you joining us by the fire tonight, Inspector Hardcastle. Your perspective has been invaluable.
The pleasure was entirely mine. Thank you for the invitation to reminisce.
And now, as the fire settles to embers and the mantel clock ticks steadily towards the late hour, perhaps our next reminiscence might touch upon a rather curious matter of identity and a certain noble bachelor.
Another narrative prepared for public consumption, Watson. One trusts the essential facts will remain intact.
Until the next chronicle, then, good evening.